Welcome to Season 3 of This Is How My Brain Works, the podcast about living, thriving, and laughing through the ups and downs of neurodiversity. We explore the real stories, the real struggles, and the real strengths that come with thinking differently.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a restful summer. This is How My Brain Works, and I'm Sarah, joined by Krista Gano, Jason Rudofsky, Michael Collins, and our very esteemed guest, Lisa Weiss. And she is going to be guiding us through how to get your kids set up for the school year if they're neurodivergent and have needs like an IEP or a 504 or want to get set up for that. But before we kind of jump into that, we are really excited to hear about Lisa's journey on this path and what she's learned and kind of how she got to where she is today as an attorney who represents people in education. And also, just so you know, this is the first episode of Season 3, and we're excited to be here. We hope you are too. Because as 4 ADHDers or whatever it is we are, that we've managed to stick with it this long, we are amazing. So we got the right supports, apparently. And now let's help you get the right supports for your kids at this time, right before school starts or as it's starting around the country. So without further ado, Lisa, tell us about you.
Okay. Hi. My name is Lisa Weiss. My pronouns are she, her. I am a career disability rights attorney, civil rights attorney. I have been practicing law since 1999. I started practicing law in New York. I worked as defense counsel for what's called the New York City Law Department under Mayor Giuliani. And that was my first exposure to special education work. So I've been practicing law for however long that is, 26 years. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 26 years is how long I've been, I would say, studying special education law. And yeah, what else do you want to know about how I got here, I wonder?
Well, I'm just curious, why did you land in special education just because that was your first job at the city? And it was a fluke?
Yeah, I did kind of land in it. I wouldn't say it was a fluke. I don't really think anything is a total fluke. But I definitely concentrated myself and went to law school because at a very young and impressionable age, I'm going to tell you my backstory about why I went to law school, I think. So
good, I like that.
Yeah, so I don't know what year it was, but it was around middle school age, I think, when the documentary Gandhi movie came out.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I was just riveted by that movie. I remember I made my mom take me to the movie. It was like 3 hours long. I think that we were at either the Mayan or the Esquire Theater in Denver, if you remember that. And my mom may have walked out of the movie. I'm not sure if she stayed there because I don't even remember, but I know that she did not like it, but I loved it. And the reason that I loved it is because I loved his story so much. And I was so compelled by the fact that he had gone to law school and then gone into civil rights. Like the lawyer part, like that professional part of it stuck with me for a long, long time. And what I knew after that experience was that I had just received a message from the universe that was drawing me toward civil rights work. And then fast forward until I went to law school, I don't know that I ever thought that I was actually going to do it, but that was when that's one of my dreams. That's when one of my professional dreams started. And because he did it, I felt like I had to do it. I didn't really know. I didn't really have a very clear path, but all I knew was that he did it, and then I started studying and really following civil rights a lot. I had several other civil rights influences, including my rabbi, who was a leader in the civil rights movement, and I respected him so much, and he talked about it a lot, Rabbi Foster. So,
Time out.
I finally got my guts up and went to law school. And I went to the law school that I went to because the president at the time of the ACLU was a professor at the law school that I went to. So like, I really was just trying to, go toward that target. And then when I got out of law school in my third year, I had finally figured out like how I was going to make the civil rights practicing happen. But I didn't really know until my third, like summer between my second and third year of law school, I got a very apparently sought after summer internship at the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York under Mary Jo White, which was a very apparently prominent internship, which I did not realize because I'm clueless and that kind of thing. And not anymore, I'm not clueless, but I was clueless then. And I worked in the civil division where they were doing the civil rights work at the U.S. Department of Justice, U.S. Attorney's Office. And I loved it. And I really loved the attorneys that I was helping, that I was working for. I was doing a lot of research. I was sitting in depositions. I was doing a lot of research. Like I was doing a ton of research and really just sitting in on all of their cases. And I realized I could do this. And then I realized that what I really wanted to do was I didn't want to necessarily I realized that I needed to be a litigator in some way so that I could go be a judge. And then I always, when I have a goal, it seems like when I have a goal, I always make that goal the highest goal that I possibly can, even if it's like really not feasible. And so that summer, I decided that I wanted to be a Supreme Court justice, like Thurgood Marshall. And I concentrated my third year on doing things that would make me marketable as a litigator. And I did moot court. I did a lot of like legal research and writing. Like I took a lot of writing classes. I did a lot in moot court and learning how to stand up in a courtroom and really speak, which was very, very difficult for me, I could go off on a tangent there too, if you want.
I'm surprised that public speaking was hard for you. You speak so eloquently. Anyway.
Thank you.
You stopped Lisa with Rabbi Foster.
Oh my God. His daughter was my upstairs neighbor in the first place we moved in Denver. So I love
Debbie's a friend of mine. Yeah,
she's
Debbie,
wonderful. Love Debbie.
Love Debbie.
Love
Debbie.
her mom and her dad. Like
love
their dogs. They have great dogs, y'all. So love the synchronicity there. Also, as you're talking, I'm like, oh my God, all the synchronicities, Lisa. I went to UCSD and the college I was at was named Thurgood Marshall. He is my like, how good? Thurgood. And then you did moot court. I know, right? Sorry, Krista, I'm the nerdiest. Krista has to cover her mouth. She's so appalled at my dorky. I'm blushing now, whatever. Okay. So
Love
also
it.
moot court. Where did you do moot court? Because I was the moot court chair for my Hastings. Yeah, UC Law SF was the school.
So I went to a private law school downtown in New York called New York Law School.
Oh yeah, I know it.
And Nadine Strawson was one of the professors there. She was the president of the ACLU. And funny, I was just telling this story yesterday. I met with someone for work. I'm in government, and I work in elections right now.
So many questions.
I know, but okay.
No.
Oh, we're going to bring it back to the neurodivergent space, Sarah Hines.
So I can bring it back. So the reason that it was difficult for me is because I identified myself as autistic after being a special education policy expert for all of these years. I identified myself as autistic, but I've never been evaluated other than myself. And I don't think that I need to. But I have, clues since I became a parent. My mom has told me things that like teachers said to her about me and stuff like that. And my experience in school, looking back, my experience in school up until high school, I probably never spoke in a class. Like I was effectively mute in school all through college until I went to law school. Mostly because I take in a lot of information by listening to other people and by observing, and I don't find that I need to be the person who's speaking in the room until I find that I'm the person that needs to be speaking in the room. I choose my words carefully. I try not to talk too much because I don't love it. I don't love talking a lot. I tend to be argumentative in that I like to get like to the root of an issue. Like I don't just like to make like small talk and like that kind of stuff. So it was difficult for me to imagine myself doing something like that when I got to law school, but I had been preparing myself since I saw that Gandhi movie. So like, for instance, and I was lucky that my brother led the way for me because I don't think that it was conscious. I think that it was subconscious what I was doing. But the Gandhi movie started me. And then luckily I had a really good role model in my brother for how to like break myself out of my quiet shell. Like I would just say I was really quiet. And
what did that look like? That model?
So he did something called DECA, Distributive Education Clubs of America, which kind of made you do things, it's a businessy organization, but like it made you put together like statements of work and like stand up and speak about them and go like give presentations.
I don't know if they have DECA anymore. I mean, because I don't.
They do.
Do they really? Because my kids haven't talked about it at all, but I remember
do.
DECA for sure in high school being a big thing.
So he did that, and he also, I did some like debate in like kind of club-like debate clubs, and I also did speaking contests for like the Optimist Club when I was in high school. And the only reason that I did those things is because I saw my brother do them, and my brother is like very much like me. He's quiet and, kind of stoic and serious and smart. And, he's definitely a role model for me. And he did those things. So I knew that they existed. And then I just did those things. So like I was kind of preparing myself for that stuff. And thank you for saying I'm articulate. I read a tremendous amount, which is where my brother and I completely diverge. Like, he is not a reader. I was a voracious reader, and I still am a voracious reader. And that, I think, really helps to be able to write well and to speak well when you're, just steeped in like language all the time.
So Lisa, at what point, because I think first I want to say that, I'm not probably going to be diagnosed officially for being ADHD. I can see it. I've got a kid who's autistic, so like everything falls in line similar to you. But when did you decide or discover or start to think about, hey, maybe this is a piece of my puzzle?
I decided that I needed to kind of out myself in a way, because a lot of people know me in Colorado because, hopefully not anymore, I was one of the few special education policy experts in Colorado. And so, and I worked for the Colorado Department of Education for like 6 years. And during that time period, there were so many people, parents, advocates, other attorneys, the people in my office who were looking to me for leadership. And I had been seeing myself, I mean, I can't even begin to imagine how many educational and medical evaluations I've read about children, because I was a complaint officer at the time. So I was investigating complaints and reading all of the evaluations. And all I could think, like, when I was talking to parents, mostly parents, sometimes children, if they were old enough to be a part of the process and their parents like kind of pushed them into it. Sometimes I would talk to a child, a teenager, a transition age, and advocates and other attorneys. And I just wanted the adults who were in this space to stop seeing kids as if they were objects. And so at one point, when I was reading all of these evaluations, like, with the exception of, like, I'm not blind or deaf, I was reading these evaluations and I could see myself in every single one. Like, like, I would look at it and I'd be like, well, maybe I have dysgraphia. Like, maybe I have, like, all these things. And it just became clear to me that anyone could qualify if things got messy enough. Anyone, I think, could qualify for special education, because it's really just a matter of becoming disabled. That's the deal. I never was like disabled. Let me try and like back myself up. So at sometime, I think during that period of time, and I don't like to talk about my own kids. The only kid that I will talk about here is the one who passed away, because like he can't tell his story anymore. And I feel like he's fair game. But the other ones I do not. But, during this period of time, like, I could see my kids in the system going through this very difficult public education system, just education system period, that was really a bunch of adults trying to fit these kids into boxes. And
Lisa, excuse me, can you just explain what your job was at the CDE? So what an evaluation means and what,
Good point.
you know what I mean? Because
Some people might not know.
what your job exactly was at the CDC.
At the CDE,
CDE.
that's okay, Colorado Department of Education, I was hired to be what they call a state complaints officer, which is a federally mandated regulation, the IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, to investigate complaints brought under that act usually by parents or advocates for children, for not meeting their special education needs in the school system. And so I was a state complaints officer. That was like my main job that I was hired for, because they could pay me from federal funds to do that job. And I was a state complaints officer for 5 of the 6 years that I was at the Colorado Department of Education. Is that enough?
Yes. So
Yeah.
Okay.
You were a judge. You had to judge a complaint, whether the school gave their side of the story, the kids and the parents, that family gave their side of the story, and it was your job to figure out if the school was doing their job or if the school was not doing their job.
Right. I was
and adhering to an IEP and everything that child was guaranteed. And so that was kind of your, right?
Yes. Yes. My most published written works are actually decisions that I made between 2014 and 2018 probably, about kids, and my findings about those investigations and those kids. And I found, I just found that I felt that children, and I still feel this, I have a really hard time talking about children without like talking about myself, because I think that children are really objectified and used. And, that makes me feel bad. It just makes me feel bad that we're objectifying kids, when like we all have the same issues that they have.
Lisa, when you mentioned earlier that your mom told you some things about you in school, or am I correct? Your interactions with teachers, or her interactions with teachers, and what they would say. How has that like influenced you and how you approach things? I mean, did your mom tell you this stuff after you'd already been practicing or before?
I mean, yeah, she told me these things after I had already been practicing and after I had kids. I had twins. I mean, I can tell you about my kids. I have 3 kids of my own and 2 stepkids, and my twins were my firstborn. They were identical twins who were born prematurely. And so because they were preemies, they, naturally kind of had a lot of issues. And we lived in New York at the time, and they have very good services there. And so they were under evaluation from like the get-go. They were on the radar of Department of Human Services and Department of Education from the get-go because they were preemies and they were under evaluation and like having all their things evaluated. And it was, I think, during that period of time when I was really, my mom, I mean, is a wonderful grandparent and a wonderful mother. And she really just was very involved in our lives, especially when they were little. And so I would, confide in her things that were happening. And I think it was during that period of time that she first told me that a couple of teachers, maybe a coach of some sort, had suggested to my parents that they have me evaluated because they thought that I was autistic during my early school years. And then, that's when I was surprised. I mean, I was shocked. And I think to answer your question, Mike, I am forever grateful that my parents did not take them up on that, because I don't think my parents, I mean, I guess that the reason that my mom didn't do anything about it, because she's a very good mom, like I'm guessing it's because she was like, what the hell? Like there's nothing, there's nothing wrong here. Like she's fine. And I was fine.
Don't you think it might also be the time period too, right? Like, I don't think anybody would have ever thought to evaluate a lot of us, especially the girls, in that time period, because they weren't the studies didn't show any girls like at all. But
yeah, I mean, the law hadn't even caught up with us at that point, and the stigma that still exists was it was even heavier then. God forbid, like, someone call me the R word. So, that I think that autistic, that word can be very linked to the R word. And so I don't think it even like, I was like, that's crazy. And I think that my teachers were doing the right thing. They were like, that's the right thing to do, is to say, like, we think that there might be something, but they must not have felt so strongly either, about it, because like I was meeting benchmarks in every way. Like I was a smart kid. I was thought of as a very smart kid, like all through school by my peers and my educators. They saw me writing well, they saw me reading well, they saw me doing math well, they saw me, I had friendships, like I was involved. I just was really, really quiet. And like, I was one of those people that was really, really quiet, that would have a couple of friends, not a whole big group of friends. And I would stick to the back of the room and I would turn in my work and it would be a work. And
I'm confused.
No problem. I was gifted. I was identified as gifted when I was in school.
I think there's a lot of us in that space.
Totally.
And I guess my one question, because I want to make sure we do save some time to talk about, these IEP and 504 questions and expectations. But I also want to say, like, or ask you, because I found like I daily learn things about my brain and in relationship to autism as an adult, that because I was never really identified as that, like I literally will daily go like, oh my God, that's me. Or, oh my gosh, that thing that they're talking about, I do that thing. Or, oh my gosh, that's why people didn't like me very much, maybe when I was younger. Or, all of these things. Or having an experience recently where I asked if I could unmask in a moment, and then when I got direct after that, I was punished. And so I think the aha moments as a person in their midlife is crazy pants. Like it's like I'm learning this new thing that is so profound. Do you feel that same way as like you've learned through this, and what are those things that have been an aha for you in learning this about yourself?
Some of the biggest things like were actually, more medical things that I learned from my own kids, specifically from Cole. Misophonia is a big one for me. Sensitivity, which is why I wear hearing aids now. I am not losing my hearing. Well, I am losing my hearing, but like I don't have hearing loss. Everyone's losing their hearing. But
so what do you use it for?
I use it to distract myself from complete silence usually. I tend to work with someone else talking, like chatter in my ear. I like to listen to news or
Reality
books.
TV. That's what this is. Everyone's like, why do you watch reality TV? I was like, I don't, but it's just chatter.
It's chatter.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like to listen to the chatter. I really enjoy music. It, makes me feel good. So I use it for that. And I don't like to bother other people with the loudness of my stuff. I grew up in a household that I believe is, we're all alike. Like my whole family is alike. My parents and my brother and I, it was just four of us, and we're all very quiet people, very like considerate of each other. And that's why I wear them, because I don't want to bother other people with my noise. And I kind of do need noise all the time. Not all the time, but a lot of the time I really do kind of need noise. And the other thing that really has been a big like highlight for me in terms of understanding myself is that I have had a sleep disorder since I was like 12 or 13, insomnia. And then all of my kids have also had sleep disorders that just presented itself at exactly the same time, like 12, 13, like early, maybe even earlier with a couple of them. And I feel really fortunate that like I made it through middle school, high school, kind of made it through college, like dealing with my sleep disorder. But like as soon as I went to college and it was under only my control and I had never been diagnosed, I knew that I had trouble sleeping, but I never said anything to my parents. Like I just dealt with it. I just got up in the morning and went to school. And I was really active. I was a competitive tennis player. Like I kept myself on a schedule, but if you don't keep yourself on a schedule, like you're screwed. And like, that's what happened to me in college. And then I had kids and became a mother and it got even worse. And my misophonia got worse. Like everything got worse because I have mom ears,
Yeah.
which is like even worse for the misophonia.
So
Yeah.
what a great, you just said the word mom. So I'm going to use that as the transition. So as I'll say one of the things that was interesting for me as a mom going through this is we chose not to have Cade diagnosed. He was diagnosed with sensory integration disorder, which I've talked about, and probably we should have gone forward with the autism diagnosis, but we didn't because he was also whip smart, gifted, the whole bit. And we were concerned that there would be a sense of not giving the needs that were, not putting the needs out there that were needed because the autism seems to loom large in that diagnosis phase,
Krista,
or it did back
was
then.
that a family discussion? Was
Well,
that
my
was it-
mother is a special education specialist with her, I'm going to say specialist like 4 times, with her specialty in autism. So we did discuss what could possibly happen if we move forward and how.
with your child? Were you all?
No, because Kate at the time was 5.
Oh,
You
5.
know, so it was 4 or 5 when he was Kate was 4 when with the diagnosis of sensory integration disorder. And so we were able to get the IEP through that, and also when we did the testing for gifted and talented, because Cade was just he was like turning puzzles upside down and where there was no picture and putting them back together. Like, I mean, clearly, like, the brain was doing big things. So that said, I think that was and I did not know at the time that about my own brain. Looking back on it, though, I think the thing that was so interesting to me is that once we entered into the IEP 504 land, I was ready like in August. Like I was like, let's go. We have a plan. I want those teachers on it. We got to do the thing. And what I had to learn through the years is that IEP or those 504 meetings were probably not going to happen until like October.
Or March.
Meanwhile, I was on, as a mother, pins and needles that something would happen in that time period because, we had things happen. Cade was expelled from school a couple of times for things like having a meltdown, walking out of the school and thinking that a part of the school was on campus that wasn't, and stepping off of campus. So then he got not expelled, suspended, never expelled, suspended. Sorry. So things like this were happening that I was continually trying to container before we could have the meeting that said, what are the expectations and how are we going to support this kid? So I think, and I, through the years, I think because we kept the school the same for 8 years, we chose a K through 8 so we could have the least amount of transitions possible. And through the years, they started to learn with me and with this kiddo that the sooner we got things sorted out and supported, the easier everybody's lives went. Like, I had to go in and say, listen, I am telling you that the year will go better if we do this early. But I think what many people maybe don't realize until you're in it is that the amount of advocacy as a parent that goes into supporting these kiddos and insisting that people listen and come to the table and talk is really, it's a lot. It was another job. And so I guess what I would say is, what are some tips that we can give parents as they're entering into a school year? Part of it was me learning to advocate, and I always advocate, not always, I often advocated in front of Cade. So eventually Cade became a great advocate for themselves.
That's good.
Because they heard it. The other piece of that puzzle, though, is that I also had to learn sometimes to give the teachers a break and to not be so on top of it. And there was a push and pull with that. Because so I wouldn't wear out my welcome, because I needed them to do things for me.
Do you, either Krista or Lisa, do you know when IEPs were established? Have they been around or was there a certain time when they implemented?
Yeah, but I don't even know
I'll
if
look
I
it up.
can I don't even know if I can access that in my brain. I'm not that person.
I'll find it.
do
You
know-
guys keep chatting.
I will tell you that from a policy perspective, there was a big shift in 2006 in I guess the U.S. Department of Education probably put down some kind of guidance or something, that a lot of kids who were being identified as being special education before 2006, probably like mid 90s up to 2006, were being identified based on a discrepancy, which is kind of like what you're talking about, Krista, is like that giftedness, that twice exceptionality. Usually is a kid who their intelligence level, which is commonly like tested when you're asking for a giftedness test, like they're looking at like that. they used to identify kids based on a discrepancy model. If there was like a high IQ and then lower functionality, like 2 grade levels or something, 2 deviations down or something like that, they would identify someone as special education, which is what happened to Cole. When he first entered school, they realized that he had a high IQ, but like he wasn't speaking much. He wasn't like doing a lot of things that were like functionally. So he ended up in a preschool because he had been identified as potentially having a disability. And then he got through kindergarten too, I think, and he still had it. But then 2006 was right at that time, and they dropped him completely. So like all those kids, there's like tons of kids that dropped out of the special education system just into the regular school system that needed all that support, that didn't get it. And now what we're seeing, in my opinion, is a bunch of people, a bunch of kids who are growing older who have mental health issues. Like that's how that goes, because they don't have high self-health. They don't have good self-esteem. They don't have good skills. They didn't have any supports. They got lost.
So wait, what year?
That was 2000. That was 2006 that stopped.
So when I started looking, it was the 2004 No Child Left Behind that went into effect, those procedural safeguards, et cetera, in the IDEA Act in July 1st of 2005, and it trickled down into the schools by 2006. So you're exactly talking about No Child Left Behind. And then the IEPs became law in 1975. So those were first instituted, although I certainly did not have an IEP.
I didn't have an IEP. I was gifted.
I was
I was hyperactive, which again, I found out from my mother like 12 years ago, I mean, like later in life, where she's like, oh yeah, you were a hyper kid. We really couldn't. And you talk about teachers, I mean, all the same comments, and I'm opposite of Lisa. I talked a lot. I couldn't sit still. I was always causing commotion, fidgeting with things. It was a difficult time. If I had an IEP, I mean, I don't know. But
Yeah, right.
I don't think they did. Right, they
discussing
didn't
with
do
your
them.
family. I mean,
Yeah.
they never discussed my hyperactivity, my gifted and talented.
Well, for us, the gift
None of it.
For us, the gift was you got to go to a different room with other gifted kids and play games.
Yes, played
So
Dungeons
fun.
and Dragons.
That's what that was.
I
And then
loved
and
it.
now and now they've said that some of those games were like from the CIA to see if we could qualify for work in the CIA at some point. But clearly I wasn't that smart. I don't know.
Neither.
So
God, that would be awesome. I wish I mean, I applied to be
I could have been a
I
spy.
applied to be an FBI agent when I was in New York, and I was like first practicing law. I applied to be an FBI agent. I really wanted to be like Clarice from Silence of the Lambs for like a minute. I was like, yeah, give me a gun. Let me hunt down some serial killers. That's what I want to do.
I'm gonna again bring us back because I
Bring
really
us
want to
back.
make sure because we have about 7 minutes left. No, we don't. We have about 15-20 minutes left. But I want to make sure that as we really come back to those skills for those parents. First of all, it might be good to say what's the difference between an IEP and a 504, and then how, in the beginning of the year when you've got a kid who you're advocating for, and I would say in some ways focusing on maybe more of those level, like autistic level 1. So it's because I think if you've got a kid that really needs support, I think that comes with a clearer path in some ways of when those meetings are, what needs to be done. I think the kids that that we're talking about who are high, maybe high intelligence and lower, or their social needs or their other needs are higher, those are the kids who I think get really pushed to the side. And that just could be my perspective because that's the one I had. But how do we get started? So what's the difference between a 504 and IEP, and how can those parents get started? Sarah, are you going to tag on? Because that's a big question.
It is, and I'm going to reverse your order.
Okay.
Can we talk? So I had a kid. I said to the teacher, "Hey, let's get her checked out." I said to other people, I sent a little email. What can we do? None of those were legally sufficient operative language that triggered the process. So I want to start with, how do you trigger the process the right way, when, and then we can talk about what the difference between IEP and 504. But I think the trigger, because those buckets are kind of the next step, But the first most important is, how do you get them to pay attention and answer and start this? And when? The end.
Hi, here's the email sent to your teacher and the principal of your school. I'm concerned about my child's education. I would like to initiate a special education evaluation. And then it has to happen in 10 days. Like, basically, they have to respond to that in some way in 10 days. That's legally sufficient. I mean, of course, anything could be argued, as you know, like they can defend and defend if they don't do it. And the timelines are hard. The timelines are really hard. Like, teachers have a really hard job overall, underpaid, not enough of them, not enough training, not enough time in the day to do everything that they're doing. And they're the ones who are responsible for this legal process. Ultimately, the building principal is the one who's responsible for everything. So, like, personally, I always try to go to the top before I, and make sure that the teacher knows as well. Like, I would always go to the top. And that's the advice that I always gave when I was at the CDE. Like, a lot of what I did there, in addition to investigating, the two main things that I did there was, other than investigating, was I fielded calls all day long from parents and from teachers who were concerned, and tried to help them figure out how they could get through the process without me giving them legal advice, because I couldn't give them legal advice. The other thing that I did, which I am extremely proud of, I mean, I'm proud of myself anyway, but I'm very proud of my work at the CDE. And it has, it's been very, very difficult for me to walk away from special education work in Colorado, because I care so much about kids and about that work. And it just feels like a crisis all the time to me, on an individual basis and on a big basis. Like, it's a crisis. The other thing that I'm really proud of is that I started I think it's called the Early Dispute Resolution Program now, where we taught all people, anyone that wanted to come to a training, parents, advocates, lawyers, school superintendents, we taught them conflict resolution skills to be able to have relationships with each other so that they could have hard conversations. I am a high conflict mediator. Like, that's my other hat that I wear as a lawyer. Like, I really decided I wasn't going to be a litigator, and I really need to be in the middle of stuff. So I needed to be a judge, and I needed to be a mediator to help people to be able to resolve things instead of fight. And the IEP process from the get-go feels like a fight. It's like parents against teachers, parents against the school system against the parents. Like, everyone's pointing fingers back and forth. But the reality of the situation is, the thing that's going to make your kid have a good experience in school is if the teacher likes them,
Oh,
and if they like the teacher.
Yeah.
I used to say when we would pick teachers, which they would always say you can't pick teachers, but I went in and was like, we're going to pick a teacher. And I used to say, I need teachers that delight in my kid's brain. And that's the truth. Like, I need teachers that delight in my kid's brain, that think that when they say we're going to do the I don't know, the clay project on the earth, and then my kid says, I would like to add dinosaurs. They go, ooh, cool.
Mm-hmm.
One question, and it's kind of an aside, but it isn't. I've found in my experience, just watching, my kids didn't have an IEP. I didn't know much about it until later on, but the financial situation of public education, or education in general, is underfunded. And when a child needs support, and when that school in an IEP is forced to get to pay for a teacher for that student, to pay for equipment for that student, what I've found is they don't have the money. And so they push it down the line, push it down the line, push it down the line. Next thing you know, your kid's now in 10th grade. We need this, we need this. You think a school is going to pay $55, $60, $70,000 a year for one student? They have 900 students in the school. And it seemed to me that you talked early on, Krista, about these meetings get pushed down the road, pushed down the road. It's October, then it's December. Next thing you know, it's we can meet in February. You meet in February, then you're like, we need to meet again. Next thing you know, the school year's over. Mm-hmm. And what I kind of felt like is that the school system behind the scenes is like, we're not going to get that device for the one student. We're going to now take $50,000-$60,000 in our IEP because this child needs something. Yes, that's what they need, and that's what you're going to pay for. And what ends up happening is, my experience, it seems like they push that down the road. They don't want to pay extra money for one to maintain one child, which they should do, and they're legally obligated to. But when you talk about pushing down the line, how much money, it seems like when it gets down to money and they have extra costs for one student, they kind of push it down the line. They don't have the funds for it.
Well, and
he's right. It's a business. Yeah. It's a business.
And we were really privileged. I'm going to say that we had we chose a charter school that is in our neighborhood, so it wasn't hard for us to make that choice. That charter school, at the time we chose it, K through 8, and you kept your teacher for at least, you looped every 2 years. So we chose it for that reason. We chose it to limit transitions, to make sure that teachers were able to get to know this kid, so that they saw Cade as for the gifts that they brought to the table, as opposed to the challenges, and that less challenges happened in 2 years than in a transition every year. That school doesn't run like that anymore. We were the last out, and now it's completely different. It's
Krista.
So that is it's an interesting thing too, how much those schools change, also how they do things.
So I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sarah.
I never realized, real quick, I had the same thing in grammar school. I went to a public school in San Francisco, and if you got into the gifted and talented program, you looped. Second, third grade was the same teacher. Fourth, fifth was the same teacher. And I still, as we talk about this, part of me turns kind of weird far right. And I'm like,
totally.
Maybe none of these controls help. The teachers actually on the ground were doing Mr. Ferrari, Mrs. Zito, what they would do with me. I would finish my math tests in second grade a good 30 minutes. If the class is 50 minutes, 30 minutes before everybody else. And then the poor teacher had this kid who, like Jason, was bouncing off the walls, trying to disturb all the people taking the test. So she grabbed me and she's like, here's the answer key, grade your test. And now everybody come give your, test to Miss Sarah. She's going to be the co-teacher. And she used me and kept me occupied. Anyway,
that's a good teacher.
At the same time, I got lucky, but maybe in some, 3 schools over in the town next door, the teachers don't get it, and they're abusing these kids who are like me, or, fighting with them. So while I do think that there's a beauty to letting it organically arise, there's cases where it doesn't, and that's what the law was meant to protect.
And you have to, as a parent, I think, like when we had one teacher one time who I'm sure was a great teacher, did not work out. And I marched in. I did not wait till halfway through the year. It was like one weekend and I was like, nope, we're making a change now. And so, but I think that, again, some of these things that we're describing are really from a seat of privilege of, of being able to speak English and walk into those schools and do that, have, knowing sort of being the one being able to have the time to be the warrior for that kid in those situations at any time of day, because I'm a consultant and I can flex schedules. So some of these things are I recognize deeply are in a very high seat of privilege that I was able to handle the situations that I was. And the other thing that I was really, the moment that phone rang, I was halfway to that school. That they were not going to get rid of me by any stretch of imagination. And I know that that is not what is happening in probably 90% of some of, with these kiddos, because it just can't.
No, it's
So
called,
here's the thing, Lisa.
It's called the school to prison pipeline for a reason.
Yeah.
Or school to death pipeline. I mean, if you really want to get, it's either
So-
prison or death.
So the IEP process, we talked about the language you use and who to talk to,
When do we,
when to talk to,
Did we
what
talk
the
about when?
language should be.
Yeah, when you
What do
suspect
you-
that there's something going on.
As soon as you think that there's something going wrong, in my opinion, as a parent, it's like common sense to me.
Okay.
Like the
Yeah.
minute you think there is something wrong, you talk to your kid, you find out what is going on with your kid, and then you seek out the professional in their life that makes the most sense to seek out, and you tell them what you want. The thing about the IDEA is it's beautifully designed in a policy way, like that. It is meant to be navigated by common sense, by a parent, by common sense. But like, to Krista's point, there is a privileged set of parents who want to be in control of everything. And I will include myself in that for sure. Like, we are, for lack of a better word, like helicoptering and trying to control every situation and pick their teachers and pick, all those kinds of things. But like, it's not possible. Like, that's not possible, honestly. I'm just going to say, like, it's not, we think it's possible. Like, we think we're controlling things, but we're not. And we're not. We're just making enemies and making people like think we're a pain in the butt. We call those, those are like frequent flyers in special education. Like, we're just frequent flyers. People who are constantly emailing, constantly going down to the principal office, constantly complaining. They're frequent flyers. Pretty soon, no one's listening to you because you're a nag. Like, that's just the truth. I know that about myself. Like, I had to do it myself. So I totally understand like how it's difficult to like contain yourself from doing that. But my advice is to not do that. Like, don't do that. Like, send one email and then follow up, go into the principal's office and say like, look, I'm really worried. Like, I really need help. And
yeah, my approach was to do it a lot in the beginning, and then I unhooked I literally was like, okay, we've got a great foundation. Unhook,
yeah,
unhook. So that by the time middle
that's
school,
normal.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's
then high
that's
school, yeah.
normal. That's normal.
So,
like, you build,
good.
you make sure that you're advocating for your kid with their
Sure.
teacher, with their doctor, with their coach of their sport team, or their, whatever, they're in some kind of activity. Like, you make sure that the professionals know that you're there and that you're paying attention, and that you're, we always say like, take cookies to the IEP meeting, like that kind of thing. Like, we're on a team with you, and that's the thing I'm most proud of at the CDE that's still going, is that like, the more and more we can build mutual respect and trust and understanding, and stop using all of our weapons all the time, the better things are going to be. And I think I started to hear Sarah say something about like far right, which was interesting, because I am not a very political person. Like, I don't follow it as entertainment in any way. Never have, really. Like, I don't think it's entertaining. I think it's sad, but and scary and sad and necessary, but not the entertainment part of it. And I don't completely disagree with anything that's happening right now under the current administration. I don't completely agree with it either. But I am, with some things, especially with respect to education, which I'm always kind of paying attention to, I do not completely disagree with what is happening right now. And I see like all the advocacy groups for like kids, for education, like up in arms, mostly people who have kids with like special, in special education, who are up in arms, like everything's going to go away, everything. You know what? Nothing was working in the first place. Like none of this was working. The U.S. Department of Education wasn't doing anything. Like they were there to enforce, but they weren't actually enforcing. So like there's no money for special education, like Jason was saying, which is completely true. Like there's not enough money for schools. There's even less money for those kids who really have high needs. And so, yeah, that's what's driving the homeschool movement, which is humongous. That's what's driving the private school movement. And in my opinion, charter schools are just private schools.
Mm-hmm.
They're just private schools. There's one education system, and there are all these different things that are a part of that education system. And it runs from people who are schooling their kids at home, which in my opinion is just private schooling. It's just, you're not getting paid, but like you're doing it yourself. So you're losing your job so that you can homeschool your kid, all the way to, people who have the money to be able to afford to send their kids off to the prep schools. That's our education system. And the whole thing is broken. It's a business system. It doesn't have enough money. It definitely favors people who have money versus people that don't have money. And it's the kids who are not white, not affluent, who have medical needs, sensory needs, all kinds of things. Like if you look at the special education cases that have set the standard for this, Supreme Court cases, they're all really, really different kids, like not the ones that we generally have born into our families. They're the deaf kids who are deaf, communicating in a different language sometimes in ASL. They're the blind kids. And we're starting to get the autistic kids, like in the Supreme Court cases.
Mm-hmm.
So my next quick question, we've now sent an email. We've sent an email to the principal. We sent an email to our
being the one to
teachers.
keep us on track.
Well, because I
love it.
I love it. No, yes, please
I
go.
love it.
So
Stop derailing, Krista.
So we've sat down with the principal. We sat down. We have our first IEP meeting. We talk about the needs of our child. Everything's set, and we go forward with this IEP. What are some pitfalls? What are some things to look for in, maintaining that IEP and making sure your child, we don't know what's going on in school unless we hear it from them or get,
Exactly.
He
Talk to your kid.
It's a yearly meeting, and remember, it's a yearly meeting with a yearly agreement.
It's yearly meeting,
or more, or as often as you need to
every day you're like, I hope they did this today. I hope that the teachers, they gave them this and that they need an interpreter. They need X, Y, and Z. Or is my kid getting this? Is my kid getting this? So you come to a point where you find out there's a problem. There's a problem. My child has not been getting what they said they were supposed to get in the IEP. What happens then?
Wait,
go to a judge would you send a complaint to your office to Lisa?
If more people would complain from the get-go, like actually complain, I feel the same way about politics. Like a lot of people are really pissed off about a lot of things. I don't know a lot of people that are actually contacting their senators, congressmen, city councilmen. I don't know a lot of people that are doing that. Like people complain all the time, but like who's emailing their senator? Who's like picking up the phone and being like, you know what? I want to talk to X. Like no one's doing that. It's the same thing. Like when I was at the CDE, I was the state complaints officer. Was like, I sat there for like 3 months before I even got a complaint to investigate. I was like, why'd you hire me? Like, what are we doing here? What's going on? Like, there were like no complaints when I started there. There were like, I think there were like 18 the first year I was there. In 2014, I was like, we need people to know that they need to complain.
Well, here's the thing about that, Lisa, and I wonder is that when you're in the school systems, I mean, like, listen, it's like running a diplomatic mission sometimes. Like you're sort of like, I'm going to go in and I'm going to be like, here are the donuts. Can we talk about the problems? I'm going to try to phrase it like, listen, if you listen to me early in the year, I swear you'll have a better year. And
you're just a little person going up a big business.
And you fear. And I remember the moment where I was like, if I complain about this thing to the school, it was later on, but there's retribution to be had from my younger kid.
100%.
And so I think the idea that you're then going to jump in and actually complain to the CDE probably for some feels like that's like the last resort. You really have to like try to,
It
or
is.
even know that you can.
It is. I mean, it is a last resort, unfortunately, but like, in my opinion, it needs to be turned, and it's ugly. Like, civil rights is ugly. Civil rights is an ugly, ugly, gross, horrible business. It's horrible, but it is fundamental to democracy
and humanity.
It's fundamental to democracy that we complain, and the problem is there's no support for the parent that does that. There's no support for the kid that does it, and it always lands on one family. And I mean,
or
I
one
could talk
parent,
all about
or one parent in the family.
one parent, one kid.
Yeah.
It's one kid who gets screwed, and then their sisters and brothers who come after them also get screwed, because civil rights, when you complain, it naturally triggers retaliation. So teachers won't complain. School administrators, teachers should be complaining. Parents should be complaining. Everyone should be holding hands, singing Kumbaya, saying, let's stand up. I mean, people should be picketing, rioting, striking. Kids should strike. Parents should strike. Teachers should strike. Everyone should strike, because I'm telling you, I don't care what anyone does to try and get their individual kid through the system. You might get your individual kid through the system. You might get their brothers and sisters through too. But you know what? It's not changing anyone. It's not changing anything for all the masses that are coming after. And that's why people file civil rights complaints. That is the reason. Because if you don't use the law, when you know that there's something wrong, nothing changes, and we continue to just have an elite class of people who get whatever they want and a bunch of other people who are screwed.
Well, and Lisa,
that's civil rights.
Lisa, one step and go one step further too, because this is now I've got the kid who we've been talking about in question has just graduated and is moving on, so doing well.
Thank God.
Fine, thank God, right?
Good.
But here's the thing: I am about as afraid as I can get. Like there was I don't
welcome.
Let's join hands. Right? But there was an article that talked about if you are the parent of a special needs kid, your nervous system after graduation is that of someone out of the military with PTSD.
PTSD was what I was about to say. PTSD. I got it. I've got it.
CPTSD, not PTSD. Complex, because it's very different.
I've got PTSD.
Sucks.
Yeah, I've got PTSD.
This thing that like everybody's like, aren't you like, congratulations, it's so great, and I am, but I'm also still in like, no, I am still in absolute abject fear of whatever this thing is, and I'm now letting go. Like it's crazy. So I also think that in just getting your own kid through, which some of us that I don't know if I could have like gone on the vendor to hold hands with a bunch of other people. I was just surviving my situation. But in not seeing the wider picture, I don't think we're probably worse for the wear on the other end too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, as parents,
right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So
but think of how many of us are like that. I mean, I almost everyone I know, and I listened to and I shared it with Jason, because he kind of like asked me. I don't know if he'd ever listened to it, but like I have an interview that I did back during COVID with a man named Jose Silva, who's like a leader in education in Colorado. And I listened to part of it last week to kind of remember. It was weird to listen to myself, but I called myself a part of a tribe of people, a part of a tribe of people. And it is truly a tribe. And there's no blame. Like, I want you to know, like, I never seek to like blame anyone for like making the choices that they do. Like, I didn't choose to fight. Like, I had to fight. Like, I felt like I was under attack and I had to fight back. Like, when the school system won't do what you want them to do because they don't have the money, and they'd prefer for you just to go away, and they start they keep hurting your kid.
Well, the three of you.
But I mean, what choice? I mean, I didn't really feel like I had a choice. I was like, I mean, I can move out of the state and try and find a better one. I can, like all these decisions are like.
But I think you find yourself in it and you don't realize how much it changes your own brain or your own experience.
Nervous system.
I think, yeah, your own nervous system. Like, I
think about all the families
just
out
coming
there.
with that.
Think about all the families out there that can't take a day off can't take a day off of work to go to an IEP meeting.
Yeah.
There's no way they can get to the IEP meeting. So that kid falls through. They don't have the resources, and you talk about,
or administration is not necessary, or I mean, to the point of like the administration of that school is not scared of them. And I don't mean that people were scared to see me coming. It's not like they were fearful. I actually had incredible relationships with that administration, but they knew I was not going to let things slide, that I was going to show up, that I was going to email the teacher, that I was going to have things on record, that I was going to show, so it's not, when I say scared, I was not a total like, bridezilla version of this. I had great relationships and still have great relationships with them, but they knew that they weren't going to go unseen. They knew I had a kid who talked to me. They knew that I asked the right questions.
And they only have to deal.
And that is so, and not everyone, and I know
no,
the majority of people cannot do that.
No, one, it's extremely intimidating. There's 15 to 16 educators in an IEP meeting. You've got everyone there.
On an individual basis, like there's the individual case, and then there's like the policy perspective. And the policy perspective is everything is driven by data. Everything is driven by numbers. So if people aren't complaining about things, then it doesn't get to the people that make decisions.
Right.
And to me, at times it felt like the school was able to put their foot right over the whole situation with the amount.
It is David and Goliath.
It's a very intimidating situation.
That's why you got to pick those teachers if you can.
The places where change has been made and where school systems are good are like, I started practicing law in New York City, and then I moved to Colorado and I started practicing law in Colorado and Denver mostly. The difference between New York City and Denver is night and day. It is night and day. And the reason that it's night and day is because New York has been around forever, and the infrastructure of New York, like their policies and procedures, are intact and well thought out and not being hashed out constantly by a bunch of people that don't really know what the heck they're doing, which is what I find in Colorado completely. And I mean, Colorado is like the wild west of everything from my perspective. And the other thing is, in New York City, what happened is that wealthy people who had kids who had disabilities that needed stuff actually fought cases so that they could make law for the kids that couldn't make their own law. Nobody does that in Colorado, and it has driven me crazy. And I actually went on like a bender for a couple of years because I was, irate that like at what I was seeing and what I was experiencing. Like I was irate, and I do have PTSD, and I'm treating my PTSD. And these conversations make me angry, so I'm probably going to have to like go do something. But I'm not normally this angry as when I'm like talking about this stuff, because it just pisses me off.
You're passionate, and you have every right to be passionate about that.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, totally. Thank you. But I went on like a mission around the time that like I was leaving. I had left the CDE, which is like a whole horror story. And I was like, I'm not a wealthy person. Like, I'm doing this because like I do have a choice, but like I didn't feel like I had a choice. Like I had to do what I had to do. I didn't feel from like an ethical, moral standpoint, that I could not stand up for what was happening in my own life to our family. And so I pursued litigation and, almost bankrupt our family doing so. And at the same time, trying like hell to get people who I thought, and I don't know if they care about me or whatever, the system or the world as much as I do, who I knew had kids who were just like mine. Yeah. Just like the kids that I was fighting for, just like all the kids that I had investigated, like all the kids are the same from my perspective. Like, yeah. I know so many wealthy people who will just spend the money and get their kid through and pay to send them to a boarding school and avoid what people in big wigs in New York City have done for the greater good. They've done it for the greater good. They used their case and they made sure that they took it all away because they could take it all away because they had the money. And so they had the money to pay the lawyers that they needed to pay pay to do it. They got their kids educated at the same time, which is what anyone can do. You can give 10-day notice on an IEP at any time. If you think they're violating the IEP, at any time you can call a meeting. They have to do it annually, but you can call an IEP meeting at any time. You could do it every week if you wanted to. It would drive them crazy. But the one thing that you can do if they're not implementing it and you know that they're not implementing, you can say, you know what, I know that this isn't being done. I'm giving you 10-day notice that you have to correct this IEP, or I'm going to be pulling them out and privately schooling them. And then then they have to do something within 10 days or they're on the hook for whatever you have to pay to privately educate that kid.
Oh my gosh.
That's what people need to know.
Say that one more time. Wow, we buried the lead on that. Say that one more time for people to hear it, and then we're gonna have to start to wrap it up.
So the one final thing that you can do is if you know that your kid's IEP is not being followed, you send an email or a letter to the case manager, whoever it is, the principal, whoever it is in the school, and give them 10-day notice. Say, I know that the IEP is not being followed. I am giving you 10-day notice that this needs to be corrected, or I'm going to be pulling my kid out and putting them in private school. And then they are on the hook for private school if they don't do something within 10 days. And that's what people in New York City have done.
We can't hear you, Sarah, and I don't know why.
I fixed it.
No, it doesn't look like
I muted because of my dogs. Sorry. So my question is, we never talked about the difference between an IEP and a 504, and it's actually pretty quick as far as I'm aware. I would say it, but I know we have an expert. So Lisa, is that same control, the 10-day notice, and I can pull for a 504? And what's the difference between the two?
Well, the 504 is just like part of the Rehab Act. So it's like a basic ADA accommodation for any age, actually, but applies to school where you have an identified diagnosis, a condition that you need accommodations for. So like a kid would come into school and they just needed, more time or something like that. Like they didn't need like special education services. They just need accommodations. That's a 504, like in simple terms.
Still a legal document though, still legal.
It's still a legal document. And once you get to graduation phase, like I don't know what happened with your kid, Krista, but if your kid had an IEP and it didn't get converted into a 504 at the end of their high school period, then that's a problem because they need that 504 to then carry them through to college. Yeah. Because they can use that 504 in college to get accommodations. They just have to turn it into their disability office and like let them know that they have a 504.
Does an IEP transfer?
An IEP does not transfer.
You go IEP to 504 and then on.
IEP is specifically just for kindergarten through graduation from high school. And it's a, legal protection to have special education services, not you can have accommodations as part of an IEP as well, but the IEP is for special education services. 504 is just accommodations to be able to access.
So we actually just had a 504 because the accommodations that were needed were things like they could not take PE away from, not PE,
recess.
recess away. They could not, there
Right.
was, there were times where a kid would get overwhelmed and was allowed to walk around the school or to the office for 5 minutes before returning to class without
You
permission.
can still I mean, you
Things
can
like
still
that.
complain. You can still
Yeah.
complain about that. Like you can complain about it to a different place though. You complain
Yeah.
about that to like the Colorado Commission of Civil Rights or something.
But that was all fine. But so then the IEP is when they also need services like an interpreter, aid, whatever those
a
things look
different
like.
a different curriculum. Yeah, different
Right.
curriculum, like specialized instruction of some sort.
And there's
If
a lot of
light-
charter schools that
light's
won't
a
accept
problem,
IEPs,
Which
I'm
is
crowds
a-
are a problem. Yeah.
which is a
What about, like,
major problem.
yeah.
sitting close to the front of they need to be at the front of the class, or those are just accommodations.
That's an accommodation.
Right. It's nothing. I got it. Okay.
What about the
But if you need
speech to
a
text pen?
Right.
that?
If you need a spelling board or
That's
you
an
need,
accommodation.
so anyway,
So complicated. So
Okay.
it was not an easy question.
So
The end.
that-
It's not, I mean, it's not such an easy question because like there's a lot of gray in there. And I think just what people need to know is that they both exist. And so like both of those key words should be said when you're having these conversations, but like that's a team decision. Like, what is this? What does this kid really need? Is it just accommodations, or do we need, you have to go through like a whole evaluation process for an IEP, that's triggered by you saying, I think that they need a special education evaluation. Like there's
Right.
something going on. I think we should find out if they qualify for special education. And in that same conversation, like they could immediately get a 504.
yeah. All right. Well,
Woof, a
This
lot,
must have
y'all.
been this must have been like the weirdest
No,
conversation. It just
and
felt
I will say that
No,
there's
not at all.
There's
I
one,
loved
not
it.
at all. I will say there's one last thing that I hope to leave you with, Lisa, as you go and maybe have a glass of wine, is that to those of us who are on the autism space, part of the reason why we're so passionate about this, I think, is because of our sense of justice. I mean, it's
Oh.
not strange that and how hooked we can get with these ideas of why can't we just be frickin' good people who like take care of each other and
like a pit bull,
yeah.
I
And-
know.
and that there's nothing that brings the fighter out. And I think that's part of my unhooking as in this is next season of life with
Ugh.
adults, the unhooking of like, I don't have to bulldog as much anymore because I've prepared this kid to bulldog on their own behalf. But it is a hard, that sense of justice thing, man, it's an earworm that really can get in and just take up residence in my head and take a really long time to unwind. So, it's just passion, and it's just wanting to have a world that we can all support each other in.
I got a lot
when
more
it's
questions.
when it's
Me
your
too.
kid, like I've just found as a mother, it's like when I had them, it was like, oh my God, like that's literally a piece of my heart. Like that person is literally a piece of my heart. And I can feel every single thing that happens to them, even if they never tell me that it's happening. Like I know something is wrong when something is wrong because it's a piece of my heart. So when they go out and they're getting hurt, it's hurting. I mean, it's so deep, and trying to like, heal that wound, and at the same time like fight for them and like not hurt them anymore by like the fighting hurts them so much.
And that's science too, because we actually share brain cells, we share DNA with our kids, we share all kinds of
Well, then
stuff.
that's one of the issues. You go into an IEP meeting, or you need to complain about what they're not doing, and you're already like you're up against the bear immediately. You're like, I have to go face the bear. I just face these people, and you talk about PTSD. No one wants to go, especially as you're going through so many IEP meetings in a year because nothing's getting done, and they keep pushing it down the road. Every time you go back to one of those meetings, it gets a little more contentious. It gets a little more fiery because nothing's getting done, and your child is not getting. And next thing you know, They've already
Year's
lost
over.
a year.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it feels like they can kind of do it on purpose.
They
don't.
do. They
So
do.
I need to be the one to either start to wrap this up or I have to leave because I have another gig to get to.
Yes.
So that's why you see me constantly trying to wrap this up. So if you guys want to keep going, I'm totally up for it, but I'm going to have to depart.
Well, let's
No,
end
I
it.
can,
Let's-
this is
let's-
enough. This is enough for
Okay.
me. And
This is
I
enough for
gotta,
one. Okay.
Is this Lisa Weiss part
Oh.
1?
Yeah, or we might be able to split this into 2. Not that people need to hear our business right now, but so I just want to thank Lisa. Thank you for bringing your passion, your wisdom, your information, your story, your heart to visit with us today. It's so great, and can't thank you enough. And for Sarah Hines and Jason Rudofsky and Michael Collins, and I'm Krista Gano. That is our first episode of season 3 of This Is How My Brain Works, and we'll see you next time.
If you like this episode of This Is How My Brain Works, please like, subscribe, and share. This podcast is the creative work of This Is How My Brain Works. It is not authorized for use in training, development, or refinement of artificial intelligence or machine learning systems. Any attempt to copy, analyze, or repurpose this audio for AI training is explicitly prohibited.